We are so burnt out after every project. And we have started doing liquid IVs after every project.
Okay, today I'm talking with Ellpetha Tsivicos and Camilo Quiroz-Vasquez. My friends for a long time. Ellpetha actually answered a Craigslist ad when she was an NYU student and I was doing a performance at Guild and Grayskull Gallery and in 2009, and then we've been friends ever since, collaborated on many projects, and then recently she's been hiring me to be the support person. And Camilo and Ellpetha have been friends, roommates, collaborators since college.
I can start. I'm a writer, a performer. I like making small visual pieces like masks and sculptural things made out of paper mache. And I also am the co-founder of One Whale's Tale, which I founded with Ellpetha.
I am Ellpetha, and I make immersive performance work that some people call theater and other people don't. My work is very inspired by dialogues with the audience and the community that we inhabit when we make the work. So I often call it dialogical work, and very inspired by magical realism, and 360 experiences that involve sound and taste and smell. Like to take people on adventures. I also like to sing and I perform and direct.
So I sent you a list of questions on this topic of like things you would like to tell to your younger self, lessons that you have learned that you didn't know you were going to learn, but that have been invaluable.
I was just looking at the first one. What are some important things you've learned outside of formal education that are surprising or are the most important and that you would like to share for the benefit of your younger self? So Camilo and I met at NYU studying drama. So we formally studied this work. And I think we both actively chose not to get master's degrees in the arts, even though that seemed to be the track we were supposed to take. But immediately upon graduation, it became very, very clear in our field and in so many fields that it's nothing to do with craft and skill and talent, and a lot to do with several other things that some are just completely random and you'll never maybe have a trust fund and be extremely wealthy, or you just aren't in the right place at the right time or know how to market yourself, know how to market your work. Maybe you're not an entrepreneur making budgets all the time to figure out how to feasibly create your work. And none of that was ever touched on in school at all.
How did you learn these things?
Um, I have really big eyes and they see everything. And I watch and yeah, I mean, I don't know. I in my 20s, like mostly worked for you. That was like the art I was doing. I really didn't have a lot of work as an artist. I just was surviving with, I started to see the people who were succeeding, who were able to commit all of their energy to whatever it is they were trying to do because they likely didn't have to work other jobs. And then you watch that and start to understand it. And then I started to see how other people were making work. I started to work in film as a stylist and an art director and a creative producer. I started working with budgets and talent, started understanding fundraising. And that was really helpful. The cool thing about film and TV work is that it's like always paid, whereas in the performing arts, it's usually never paid. And bringing that attitude to theater and to the performing arts was helpful. Like, this is my day rate. Um, it's not personal. This is my day rate. The way that we got into understanding like institutional funding and grants and stuff like that was in 2020, we had written a short film called Quince about a young queer Mexican-American girl wanting to bring a girl to her quinceañera, to her Sweet 15. And so we had applied for a funding opportunity with a big theater company run by someone who is an active Broadway director. It's called The Team. And we were awarded the funding, but it ended up becoming a play. And then it ended up becoming the first live performance to happen in New York during COVID, because we did it outside in a community garden. And all of the COVID precautions were built into the story. And in that production, the company that we were working with was like, this is incredible. We're about, to do something amazing. We need more money. And they applied with us for a grant. And, it was for our project. It was a co-production and we got the funding.
How did you find Petrie and Venturous Theater Fund?
Okay, so the Petrie projects, the way we found that was because Rachel Chafkin, who runs the team, who's one of the founding members of the team, went to NYU and taught at NYU. She wasn't in school when we were in school, but she was teaching in some of the programs. And so the team was always like making work, and we were always like tangentially involved because our friends were working with them or something like that. But I had been hired by the team to be a producer on a show called Primer for a Failed Superpower. And so I was producing for them on this project. And then I was on their mailing list. And so they sent out this opportunity, and Camilo and I were like, let's apply. The Venturous Theater Fund, we didn't know about. It was the people who ran the team, which is like a very well-funded, beautiful organization. They're very much in the loop. It was the, producing director and like the associate director of the team who was working with us directly. Their whole world is grants, which was a different language for Camilo and I. And they were the ones that said, let's do this Venturous Theater Fund. They knew what it was. After that process ended, Camilo and I were like, how do we get grants? Like, do we need to be working with a prestigious company in order to get them? We also really lucked out with that opportunity. It was one of those things that was timing. I mean, every newspaper wrote about Quince in August of 2020. We were in the New York Times and the Washington Post and like everywhere. So we had a bunch of press, and that really helped. And then we just started people would send us grants, and we started compiling it in a big giant document. And we really didn't understand fully what we were doing. We were just doing it.
Sounds like you're maintaining positive social networks and then also working really hard diligently on your own, and then being able to adapt your project to an opportunity as it comes up.
Yeah, that's all very true. And the adapting is what really made us succeed in that moment in time, because everything that was a disadvantage for us for so many years became an advantage. We were small, we were two people, we are used to working with whatever is available to us, not with the most ideal circumstances. With COVID, I was like, great, I love rules. I was like, this is amazing. And we relied on the things that are valuable to us, like our community, the community garden that we love. We were able to just kind of walk over while these huge institutions were struggling to function because there's so much red tape and they're so big that they can't pivot. So now one thing Rachel Chafkin, who's the artistic founder, director of the team said to us after that process ended, I was like, what do we do now? Like, how do we like get grants? And she was like, in my experience, getting grants gets you grants. Camilo is really great at writing grants. At the beginning, we both would do it, but I could spend the rest of my life on one application and it would never be complete. Forget when you get to the work samples, I'm like lost in a sea of 4,000 photographs and like editing videos for no reason. It's not I'm a bigger picture person, so I can tell the story. Camilo can tell me the grant and I'm like, this is what it is. This is our angle. And then I can't touch it. So I'll let him talk about that a little bit.
I think there are a lot of things that Ellpetha touched on that can build off of maybe from a slightly different direction. Um, I spoke on this panel at NYU for NYU students last year, and so many of their questions were about combating imposter syndrome, which I thought was so interesting. That a bunch of students who have already gotten into like this great university were still just worried that they didn't belong there. Already they were thinking that. They were like freshmen. Um, and I think a lot of that goes to what Ellpetha was saying, that even as you get out of school and you start to work, there are like a lot of things you can't control. Like you can't control that somebody might have more money than you, or you can't control that somebody might have more, family connections to work or personal connections to work or whatever it is. But then you also kind of start to realize that, like, especially from doing a lot of different jobs, which both of us have done, that most people are not actually that great at what they do. And they've gotten to doing what they do for any number of reasons. And for me, a lot of it has been like, oh, you run this, but you are not good at doing this. So I can definitely do at least that, if not more. And then as you have more jobs like that, you start to realize I can do like a lot of different things well, semi well. And most people are only doing things kind of semi well. So you just kind of have to like give yourself permission to try new things and to be like, you know what? If you were able to get into, even fill out an application to get into a university, then you can fill out a grant application. You can apply for a job, you can learn how to use a camera. We can start another Zoom session once this one ends in a few minutes, because I see that's happening as well. It's like all of these like little skills that you have apply to most things that you're trying to do. Like the hardest part is all the logistics of being an artist. It's not really, it's like your work is something you struggle with like so personally and with your closest collaborators. But it is about trying to figure out those outside logistics of like, how do I get the money? How do I fill out the grants? And a lot of it is like using the skills you have for other things and like trying to research, asking people questions, asking people that you kind of look up to questions. That's kind of what started to happen with us with the team. Like Ellpetha was saying, it's like they would kind of say things and we were like, yeah, we don't know how to do that. And they'd be like, oh, well, to do that, you have to do this, this, and this. And we'd be like, okay, got it. And we didn't get it right away. Like a lot of the grants we still didn't get the first time we applied for. But then after that, we started to understand more of the process of how these things work.
So you had a mentor.
Yeah, mentors are helpful and they are hard to find, but they are helpful.
But I want to say that you also were a mentor to me, still are, because so much of the work that I did with you and I got to collaborate with you on, and going from like, the first thing, which was I was supposed to teach you to tap dance in 2 weeks.
Didn't work.
Yeah. And then by the last performances we did together, you were like, this is my collaborator. We made this together. And I was like, very, very, very lucky. Finding a person that you love on Craigslist is very, very lucky. And to still know each other and work together is very, very cool. But just doing that with you, I would just like look around and I was in a totally different setting than I understood. It was a lot of visual artists, but you are a visual artist, but you were invited to do performance work because you also do that. And I'd be in these spaces and I'd try to understand. I mean, we worked in so many crazy, beautiful, huge institutions. Um, and what I was thinking about with Camilo also, and you just like let me be an artist with you. And so much of Camilo and I talk about all the time, a lot of like our aesthetic, I can see so connected to the work I was doing with you because of this sort of planned chaos, pandemonium performance things that we would do. And even though like what I make looks different, there's so much of that. I'll be like, I want a choir and like people dancing in clogs and like, and and I'm like, oh my God, this is so like that. Um, but I would say that literally most of our success has to do with me being insane and a detective. I'm a detective with friends. I'm a detective with lovers. I'm a detective.
Yeah, and being around the artists that you want to that you enjoy, or like, going to see people's work that you appreciate and letting them know that you appreciate it, or being in communities that you want to do work in as well, is also like really important. A lot of the work we do, it's like it involves so many different artists, and I think it's also, they're artists that we really love and that whose work we really love. And so even when we're not working on something with them, we support their independent work as well because we believe in it. And it kind of creates this community, and it takes away, like Ellpetha was saying, this feeling of competition. Like we shouldn't be competing for resources, even though they are kind of limited. We're never really in that type of competition with each other. It's we all gain more from sharing what we know with each other.
Okay, so we have 3 minutes left before I start another Zoom, but both of you guys will have behind the scenes in producing the theater works that I've seen, but you guys also both perform. So you might have a little extra on the question about doing self-care after a project since you've had a double exertion.
We have started doing a really funny thing after projects because despite all of these really great examples I've just given of how we get funding and all of this stuff, it's still never enough money. There's still never enough help. We are so burnt out after every project. And we have started doing liquid IVs after every project. We go to this place called Clean Market, and it's so expensive. And at the beginning, we were just like, whatever. And now we put it in the budget because otherwise I would get sick probably for 3 weeks. Like we're so dead, and like physically dead. And I can't afford to get
In
sick.
the drip.
We will get like usually very immune system oriented, a lot of B12, vitamin C, glutathione. It's usually it. Yeah, that's it. That's what we do.
Wow.
It's a work in progress of what else we should do because
Because
it's
that's,
never enough.
yeah,
It's hard because you have these like really high highs, especially if you're performing, and if you're performing in front of large groups of people, it's a big rush of adrenaline. To then not have that after, or to not have something you're actively working on every day, it can lead to like really low lows. And I think it's still kind of a process of figuring out how to combat that for me, for sure.
Seems like for me, having something in the future, a next project always helps too.
Yeah, I think so. But sometimes it's like hard to even want to, it's like, yeah, but it's not going to get me that rush, I don't know, maybe got to start like bungee jumping or something. I haven't figured it out yet.
Okay, we're it's gonna come to an end. So I want to say thank you guys so much. It's a pleasure to know you as human beings, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.